A 29-year-old miner just spent $15 million on dirt that everyone else walked away from. No investors, no bank loan bailout waiting in the wings if it goes wrong. Just his own money, staked on a stretch of ground in the Yukon called Dominion Creek. If the gold is there the way the numbers suggest, it could be worth over $160 million. If it isn't, it's the biggest mistake of his career. This is the story of how Parker Schnabel got to that bet, and why he made it anyway. To understand why a grown man would risk that kind of money on frozen ground in the Canadian North, you have to go back to where he started, because Parker Schnabel didn't stumble into gold mining. He was raised in it. He grew up in Porcupine Creek, Alaska, the son of Roger and Nancy Schnabel, and his path was set early by his grandfather, John Schnabel, who founded the Big Nugget Mine in Haines, Alaska. Parker was around 5 years old when he first started showing up at that mine, small enough that the equipment probably looked enormous next to him. By the time he was a teenager, he wasn't just watching, he was working. At 15, he was helping run parts of his grandfather's operation, and by 16, he was effectively leading a crew of miners who were, in some cases, more than 3 times his age. That's not a small thing in an industry built on decades of hard-earned experience. Convincing grizzled, weathered miners to take direction from a teenager takes more than a family connection. It takes results. The real turning point came when Parker was 18. Most 18-year-olds in his position would have taken the safe road, college, a degree, a career that didn't involve steel-toed boots and diesel fumes at 4 in the morning. Parker did the opposite. He took the money that had been set aside for his college education and used it to lease ground in the Klondike from Tony Beats, one of the most respected and experienced placer miners in the region. It was an enormous gamble for a teenager. He was staking his entire financial future, the money meant to build a different kind of life, on his ability to find gold in a place he didn't own, using equipment and a crew he had to prove himself worthy of leading. His first season as an independent operator produced results that surprised a lot of people who doubted him. He pulled out gold worth roughly $1.4 million. For a first-year operator working leased ground, that kind of number doesn't just pay the bills. It earns respect. It told the older, established miners in the Klondike that this wasn't a rich kid playing at mining. This was someone who understood the ground. From there, Parker built something that outlasted a single good season. He founded Little Flake Mining, and over the following years, it grew into one of the largest and most successful placer gold operations in the entire Yukon. Company expanded across multiple claims throughout the Klondike region, including a royalty agreement on Australia Creek, which sits inside a historic mining district that has produced more than 20 million ounces of gold since it was first discovered generations ago. That's the kind of ground with a real pedigree, not a lucky pocket, but a district with a documented, long-term track record of producing serious gold. This is also around the time most viewers came to know him, because Parker's rise happened in public, on camera. He joined Discovery Channel's Gold Rush when the series premiered in 2010, first appearing as a supporting figure alongside his grandfather at the Big Nugget Mine. It didn't take long for him to become one of the show's central figures. Audiences responded to something specific about him. Not just the gold, but the way he worked. He took calculated risks instead of reckless ones. He didn't quit when a season went sideways, and there were plenty of seasons that did go sideways before they came good. Over more than 16 seasons, plus spin-off shows, including Gold Rush, Parker's Trail, which followed him to mining regions as far away as Papua New Guinea, Guyana, and Australia. Parker built a reputation as arguably the most consistently successful miner in the franchise's history. The numbers backed that reputation up. By the time he was 24 years old, Parker had mined a total of more than $13 million worth of gold over the course of his career to that point. And that pace didn't slow down. It accelerated. His 2018 season produced the single biggest cleanup in Gold Rush history at that time, worth $8.4 million. An enormous number that came after what was reportedly a genuinely difficult start to that season. That's a pattern that shows up again and again in his career. Rough starts, real doubt from the people around him, and then a result at the end of the season that silences the doubt. By his early 30s, industry reporting put his career total at somewhere north of 50,000 ounces of gold recovered before he'd even turned 30. A staggering figure for placer mining, which is notoriously inconsistent and unforgiving compared to hard rock operations with predictable ore bodies. But success on that scale creates its own problem. Once you've mined out the easy, high-confidence ground, where do you go next? Every operator in the Klondike eventually runs into this wall. The best-known creeks have been worked, in some cases, for well over a century. Finding fresh, high-value ground that hasn't already been picked over by generations of miners before you becomes harder every year. This is the exact problem Parker was facing heading into 2023, and it's the problem that led him to Dominion Creek. Dominion Creek isn't an unknown name in Yukon mining history. It's part of the historic Klondike goldfields, ground that's been worked on and off since the original gold rush era over a century ago. But by the time Parker started looking at it seriously, large sections of it had been sitting underutilized. Not because the gold wasn't there, but because pulling it out required a scale of investment that most operators simply couldn't justify. In 2023, Parker made his move. He paid approximately $15 million for a massive block of placer claims across Dominion Creek. According to industry reporting, it stands as the single largest land investment in gold rush history and one of the biggest private placer acquisitions anywhere in the modern Klondike. This wasn't leased ground anymore, the way his career had started at 18. This was ownership on a scale most placer miners never approach in their entire careers. The scale of what he was betting on is worth sitting with for a second. The property is estimated to hold approximately 80,000 ounces of recoverable gold. At gold prices reported above $5,000 per ounce, that translates to a potential payout of more than $160 million, over 10 times what he paid for the ground, if he can actually extract it efficiently. That "if" is doing a lot of work in that sentence, because estimates are not gold in the wash plant. Every experienced miner, including Parker himself, understands a gap between what a geological estimate says is theoretically in the ground and what actually comes out after you've spent months fighting frozen soil, unpredictable water, and mechanical breakdowns at 40 below zero.
There's also a structural pressure built into the deal that raises the stakes even further. Reporting indicates his mining license for the property comes with a 6-year window and requires him to produce roughly 10,000 ounces of gold per year to hit his production targets. That's not a casual goal. That's a number written into the terms of the license itself, meaning underperformance isn't just a disappointing season, it potentially threatens the long-term viability of the entire investment. Parker has been direct about what that kind of production target actually requires. Mining, in his own description, is a game of massive amounts of capital expenditure. The challenge, as he's put it, is finding a way to spend as much money as you possibly can, as efficiently as you possibly can, because in placer mining, undercapitalized operations are the ones that fail. You can't wash enough ground to hit 10,000 ounces a year by running lean. You have to scale up, and scaling up costs money before it makes money. Which brings the story to Gold Rush Season 16, which premiered on November 7, 2025, and which industry coverage has described as the most ambitious season of Parker's career. His stated target for the season is 10,000 ounces of gold, worth an estimated $35 million, a number that would require running 4 wash plants simultaneously for the first time in his operations history. He's reportedly called it his biggest mining experiment ever, and the phrase fits. It's not a single high-risk gamble on one patch of unproven ground. It's an entire operation, restructured and expanded across multiple sites at once, all pointed at hitting a number that's never been attempted at this scale in the show's history. The operation itself is spread across several locations rather than concentrated in one spot, which is its own kind of risk management, but also its own kind of complexity to coordinate. Dominion Creek is the primary focus of the season, with 2 wash plants running under the direction of foreman Tyson Lee. A separate site on the Indian River, managed by longtime right-hand man Mitch Blaschke, runs a plant nicknamed Roxanne. And a 4th wash plant is running on Sulphur Creek, rounding out an operation that spans ground Parker has spent more than a decade building relationships and reputation to be able to access. Running 4 wash plants at once means 4 times the fuel consumption, 4 times the crew coordination, 4 times the points of mechanical failure, and 4 times the daily operating costs that, according to industry reporting, run into serious money every single day the plants are running, whether or not gold is actually coming out of the ground that day. What makes this moment in Parker's career different from earlier seasons isn't just the dollar figure. It's the nature of the bet. Leasing ground from Tony Beats at 18 was a personal risk. If it failed, Parker lost his college fund and had to figure out a new plan. Buying Dominion Creek outright in 2023 was a business risk on an entirely different scale, involving a liquid asset and a license with built-in annual production requirements that don't pause for a bad season. There's no landlord to walk away from if the ground underperforms. He owns it. Whatever comes out of it, or doesn't, is his. That's really the through line of Parker Schnabel's story, from the big nugget mine as a 5-year-old to a $15 million land purchase in his late 20s. It's not that every bet paid off spectacularly. Plenty of seasons in his career started rough, with doubt from crew members and skepticism from more experienced miners in the region. It's that he's kept making calculated bets on ground other people had written off or hadn't fully committed to, and backed those bets with real capital and real operational scale rather than hope. The big nugget mine gave him the skills. Tony Beats' leased ground gave him the proof that he could operate independently. Little Flake Mining and the Australia Creek royalty gave him a real company with real infrastructure behind him. And Dominion Creek is, by every account available right now, the biggest test of everything he's built so far. Whether the estimated 80,000 ounces actually comes out of that ground, and whether 4 wash plants running simultaneously can hit 10,000 ounces in a single season, is something that plays out over the course of season 16 and likely beyond, given the 6-year license window attached to the property. What's clear from the documented history is that this isn't a young miner getting lucky once. It's a pattern: leveraged ground, real risk, real capital, and a willingness to keep pushing scale even after he'd already built one of the largest private placer operations in the Yukon. Dominion Creek is simply the largest version of a bet he's been making, in one form or another, since he was 18 years old with a college fund and a lease agreement from a miner who'd earned the right to be skeptical of him. If it works, it could redefine what a modern placer operation in the Klondike looks like. If it doesn't, it's a reminder of just how unforgiving this ground has always been, for every miner who's ever worked it, going back over 100 years.